The throne room of the Krell Empire stretched out like a vast cavern. Walls made of dark stone rose up to a ceiling no one could see. The light came from crystals that glowed with a pale blue color. Queen Zixtara sat on her throne and looked down at the object in front of her. It was a piece of armor. The armor had been damaged in battle. One of her best warriors had returned from a mission against rebel forces. The armor had taken a hit from an energy weapon. Deep cracks ran through the metal. Parts of it had melted and fused together. The edges were sharp and broken. Zixtara turned it over in her hands. Her skin was a deep purple, and her fingers were long with sharp nails. She had been the ruler of the Krell for 30 years. She had seen many things, but this confused her. "Tell me again," she said to her lead engineer. His name was Krellmo. He stood straight and his face showed no emotion. "Your Majesty," Krellmo said, "the damage is beyond our repair. The molecular structure has been compromised. The weapon used was our own design. No armor can withstand that level of energy release. We must discard this piece and create a new one." Zixtara looked at the armor again. She ran her finger along one of the cracks. Then she stopped. She pulled her hand back. "This armor works," she said. It was not a question. Krellmo's face changed. His eyes widened. "That is impossible," he said. "I can see that it works," Zixtara said. She stood up from her throne. "Bring me the warrior who wore this armor." The guards moved quickly. They brought forward a tall Krell warrior named Vexter. He was scarred from many battles. He kept his eyes forward and did not look at anyone. "This armor," the queen said, "you returned with it. It works, yet our best engineers say it cannot work. Explain this to me." Vexter spoke slowly. "Your Majesty, I did not repair it. When I came back from the mission, it was already fixed. I brought it to the engineers. They said the same thing you said. It cannot work. But it does." Zixtara felt something in her chest. Not fear, but something close to it. The Krell did not make mistakes. Their science was perfect. Their technology was superior to all other species in the galaxy. They had conquered 14 star systems. They had made peace with the powers they could not conquer. Everything they made worked the first time. Things that were broken were thrown away. "Who touched this armor?" she asked. "Find every person who was near it." The investigation took 3 hours. The armor had been in the military hangar. The hangar was near the docks where the colony ships arrived with supplies and workers. A guard at the docks remembered seeing a figure working near the armor late at night. The figure was not Krell. It was human. The queen sat back on her throne. Humans. The humans were from the colony ships that had arrived 5 years ago. They were from a world called Earth. The Krell had found the humans to be simple creatures. They could lift heavy things. They could work long hours. But they had no real intelligence. Their technology was thousands of years behind the Krell. Humans were useful as workers. Nothing more. "Bring me the human delegate," the queen commanded. The guards left and returned within minutes. They brought a man with them. His name was Marcus. He was average height for a human, with dark hair and a calm face. The Krell in the throne room made sounds of surprise. It was not normal for a human to stand before the queen. Marcus bowed. He did not know if he should, but it seemed right. "Marcus," the queen said. She knew his name because she made it a point to know the names of all important foreign delegates. "Do you know why you are here?" "No, Your Majesty," Marcus said. His voice was steady. The queen held up the piece of armor. This armor was damaged beyond repair. Our engineers said it could not be fixed. Yet it is fixed. A guard saw a human working on this armor. "Was it you?" Marcus shook his head. "No, Your Majesty. It was not me. It was a man named Patrick. He is an engineer, a mechanical engineer. He works with machines and tools. The Queen leaned forward. An engineer. And this Patrick has the skills to repair what our engineers cannot. Patrick has skills, Marcus said carefully, but not the kind you have. He understands machines differently. He thinks about them in a different way. Bring him to me, the Queen said. Now, the guards moved again. This time, they went to find Patrick. He was in his quarters near the worker district. He was sleeping. The guards woke him and told him he had been summoned by the Queen. Patrick put on his clothes and went with them. He was confused and a little afraid. Humans did not usually go before the Queen. He entered the throne room 30 minutes later. Patrick was taller than Marcus. He had brown hair and a strong build from years of working with his hands. He was 43 years old and had been an engineer for 20 years before the colony ships left Earth. He looked at the Queen and then at the piece of armor in her hands. He understood immediately what had happened. "Your Majesty," Patrick said, and he also bowed. "I repaired that armor." The Queen stood. All the Krell in the room made a sound of surprise. One of them stepped forward as if to protect the Queen from danger. But she raised her hand and stopped him. "You," she said to Patrick, "you fix what our engineers could not fix." "Why?" Patrick looked at the armor again. He could see his own work in the repairs. He had used new methods. Methods that Krell engineers would not understand. "Because it could be fixed," he said. "It was damaged, not destroyed. The structure was still there. I just had to find a way to restore the function." The Queen moved down the steps from her throne. She walked toward Patrick. She was tall, even for a Krell. She looked down at him. "How?" she asked. Patrick took a breath. He knew that his answer might change everything. "I tried things," he said. "I made mistakes. I tested ideas until something worked. That is how humans solve problems. We fail many times until we succeed." The Queen was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the throne room was completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, the Queen said, "You will come with me to my workshop. You will teach my engineers how you think. This is not a request. This is an order." Patrick nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty." As the guards led him away, Patrick did not know that his next words, his next actions, would change the future of two entire species. He did not know that a simple repair to a piece of armor would set in motion events that would shake the foundations of the Krell Empire itself. He only knew that he had been asked to work on a problem, and he was ready to try. The workshop was nothing like Patrick expected. It was clean and bright. The walls were white and smooth. Tools hung in perfect rows. Everything had its place. There were no dust, no mess, no chaos. It looked more like a display than a place where work actually happened. Patrick stood in the center of the workshop and waited. The Queen had left him in the hands of Krelmo, the same engineer who had said the armor could not be repaired. Krelmo's face showed disappointment. A human would now teach him. This was not something he wanted. "Come," Krelmo said finally. "The Queen wishes to understand your methods. Show me how you repaired the armor." Patrick walked over to a workbench. On it sat the damaged piece of armor. It had been placed there for him to examine. Patrick picked it up and turned it over in his hands. "First," Patrick said, "I looked at the damage. I did not say it was impossible. I said it was difficult. Then I asked myself a simple question. Why did the armor fail at this point and not that point?" Krelmo watched him carefully. "The energy weapon," Patrick continued, "hit here. It melted the metal on the surface. But underneath, the structure was still strong. So I thought, What if I could strengthen what was broken without replacing the whole piece? What if I could use the existing material and reshape it? That violates the principles of Krell engineering, Krellmo said. The metal has been compromised. It must be replaced. On Earth, Patrick said, we did not have unlimited resources. We could not always replace things. We had to repair them. We had to find new ways to make broken things work again. Patrick set the armor down and went to a tool rack. He selected several tools that seemed strange to Krellmo. There were rough files and grinding wheels. There were heating tools that did not use precision energy weapons. There were simple metal rods and clamps. I took the broken armor, Patrick said, and I analyzed it. The metal composition, the thickness, the joints. I tested different ways to reshape it. I failed many times. I tried one method. It did not work. I tried another method. It did not work. I tried a third method. It worked. But this is inefficient, Krellmo said. Why would you waste time on failure? Failure teaches you what does not work, Patrick said. When you know what does not work, you are closer to knowing what does work. Humans understand this. We have learned through failure for thousands of years. It is how we survive. Krellmo was silent for a moment. Then he said, show me. For the next 6 hours, Patrick worked on the armor with Krellmo watching. He used heat to soften the damaged metal. He used simple tools to reshape it. He tested the shape. He adjusted it. He tested again. Some adjustments failed. He made new adjustments. He tested again. This was strange to Krellmo. In Krell engineering, the design was perfect before any work began. The work was only execution of the design. There was no testing, no adjustment, no failure. But slowly, the armor began to take shape. The cracks began to close. The broken edges began to smooth. By the end of 6 hours, the armor looked almost new. Now, Patrick said, we test it. We check if it works. They took the armor to a testing chamber. Krell technicians exposed it to the same energy weapon that had damaged it. The armor held. It did not break. It did not crack. Patrick had succeeded. Krellmo stood in silence. Around him, other Krell engineers watched in shock. A human had done something that their best engineers said was impossible. How? Krellmo asked finally. I tried, Patrick said simply. I failed. I tried again. I failed. I tried again. This time, I did not fail. Over the next 3 weeks, Patrick worked with the Krell engineers every day. He taught them his methods. He showed them how to think about problems differently. He showed them how to document their failures so they could learn from them. He showed them how to test ideas quickly instead of trying to make everything perfect on the first attempt. The Krell engineers resisted at first. Failure was shameful to them. Admitting that you did not know the answer was weakness. But they could not deny the results. Items that had been abandoned because they could not be fixed began to work again. Problems that had no solution suddenly had multiple solutions. Then the Queen came to the workshop one day. She observed Patrick working with a group of engineers. She saw them fail, adjust, and try again. She saw them document their failures without shame. Patrick, she said, I have a question for you. As a human, how do you approach a problem you have never seen before? Patrick set down his tools. Your Majesty, I ask myself what I know. Then I ask myself what I do not know. Then I try to learn what I do not know. Sometimes I learn quickly. Sometimes I fail many times. But I keep trying until I find an answer. The Queen nodded slowly. The Krell approach is different. We research completely before we begin work. We make the design perfect. Then we execute. Failure is not part of our process. But what if you cannot research completely? Patrick asked. What if you face a problem no one has ever solved? What if your perfect design is not enough? The Queen was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Come with me. I have something to show you." She led Patrick and Chromo to a secure chamber deep beneath the palace. Inside were files and images of military plans. The Queen showed Patrick everything. The Krell were facing a threat they could not overcome. The Velroth Empire was expanding. Their technology was superior to Krell technology. The Krell military advisors had run all the calculations. The only possible outcome was defeat. "The Velroth will attack within 6 months," the Queen said. "My generals say we cannot win. Can you help us, Patrick? Can your human way of thinking help us find a solution where there is no solution?" Patrick looked at the files. He looked at the numbers. Then he looked at the Queen. "I can try," he said, "but I will probably fail many times before I find an answer." "Then try," the Queen said. "We have nothing to lose. We will lose this war anyway. If you fail, nothing changes. But if you succeed, we might survive." Patrick took the files. He had no idea what he was about to walk into. He did not know that the answer he found would change the course of history. He only knew that he had been given a problem. And for the first time since arriving on the Krell homeworld, he felt like he had a real purpose. Patrick spent 4 weeks studying the military intelligence. He lived in a room in the palace. Guards brought him food and equipment. He read reports about Velroth tactics, their weapons, their history, and their strategies. He read about Krell military strength, their numbers, and their capabilities. Then he began to see something. The Velroth were powerful, but they were predictable. They used advanced weapons. They expected enemies to meet them in direct combat. They relied on technology to win battles. They did not expect creative thinking. They did not expect someone to fight them differently. But humans had done this for thousands of years. Humans had fought enemies with superior weapons and technology. Humans had survived battles they should have lost. Not because they had better weapons, but because they thought differently. Patrick called a meeting with the Queen and her military advisors. They gathered in a war room deep beneath the palace. Maps of the border regions lay on tables. Models of Velroth weapons displayed on shelves. Krell generals stood with their arms crossed, waiting to hear what the human had to say. "The Velroth will attack here," Patrick said, pointing to a map. "This is the weakest point in your defenses. They will come with heavy weapons and superior numbers. You cannot win a direct battle." The generals made sounds of agreement. This was what they already knew. "But," Patrick said, "the Velroth expect you to defend this position. They expect a direct battle. They do not expect you to be unpredictable. What do you suggest?" The Queen asked. "Do not defend this position," Patrick said. "Let them take it. Then attack them from places they do not expect. Use your knowledge of the terrain. Use your warrior strength. Use small teams instead of large armies. Hit them, then disappear. Hit them again somewhere else. Never fight them the way they expect to fight." A general named Vertrek spoke. "This is not how the Krell fight. We engage the enemy directly. We use our superior numbers and weapons. We defeat them." "But the Velroth have superior weapons," Patrick said. "And they have superior numbers in this region. You cannot win a direct fight. So do not fight directly." Another general, Restok, asked, "How do you know this will work?" "You have no data to support this strategy." "I have historical data," Patrick said. "I have studied human wars. Smaller forces have defeated larger forces many times. Not through direct combat, through adaptation and strategy." The Queen leaned forward. "Tell us what you need, Patrick. Tell us what we must do." Over the next 2 weeks, Patrick worked with a small unit of Krell warriors. His name was Commander Dreneval. He had 40 warriors under his command. Patrick trained them in new tactics. "Most of your training teaches you to stand and fight," Patrick said in the first session. "I will teach you to move and strike, to be flexible, to change your strategy when something does not work." The Krell warriors were strong and deadly. They were trained in combat since childhood, but they had never been trained to adapt. They had been trained to follow orders and execute perfect tactics. Patrick taught them to think. He gave them situations and let them choose different responses. He taught them that there was not always one right answer. There were many ways to solve a problem. He taught them to scout enemy positions without being detected. He taught them to attack from unexpected directions. He taught them to retreat when necessary instead of fighting to the death. He taught them to gather information and adjust their strategy based on what they learned. Dreneval was skeptical at first, but he was also desperate. If the Velroth could not be stopped, his people would be conquered. He was willing to try anything. After 2 weeks, Patrick said, "You are ready. Not perfect, but ready. Remember, the goal is not to win a big battle. The goal is to make the Velroth uncertain, to make them waste resources, to make them afraid." The Queen authorized a trial operation. Dreneval and his warriors were sent to the border region. Velroth scouts had already begun moving into position. They were preparing for their attack in 3 days. The first night, Dreneval's warriors attacked a Velroth supply line. They did not try to destroy the entire line. They struck quickly and disappeared. 3 Velroth soldiers were killed. Supplies were damaged. The second night, they attacked a communication post. They disrupted the Velroth ability to coordinate their movements. The third night, they were supposed to defend the main position. Instead, they were waiting in a hidden location. The Velroth came with their heavy weapons, expecting a direct battle. They did not find one. The Krell warriors had withdrawn, but the Velroth did not advance. They stopped. They did not understand what was happening. Their scouts reported that Krell warriors were everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Then Dreneval attacked from the mountains. He knew the terrain. The Velroth did not. His warriors used the rocks and the high ground. The Velroth soldiers were confused. Their advanced weapons were difficult to use on uneven terrain. The Velroth commander called for reinforcements, but his supply lines were damaged. His communications were disrupted. His soldiers were afraid. After 3 days of these attacks, the Velroth withdrew. They moved back to their own territory. They left a message that they would return with stronger forces. But they did not return. The trial operation had worked. The Queen brought Patrick to the main battle plaza and announced his victory to all the Krell warriors gathered from across the Empire. She told them how a human had found a way to defeat the Velroth. She told them that human thinking had saved the Empire from invasion. The Krell people celebrated. Patrick was given honors. Krellmo approached him and bowed. This was a gesture of great respect. "I was wrong about you," Krellmo said. "I thought humans had no value. I was wrong." Over the next months, Patrick worked with more military units. He trained more warriors. Slowly, the entire Krell army began to change. They began to think differently. They began to adapt. They began to see failure not as something shameful, but as something that taught them. The Queen called Patrick to her throne room. She was alone. "You have saved my empire," she said. "But there is something more important that I need your help with. It will be more difficult than any battle. Will you help me?" "Yes," Patrick said. "What do you need?" The Queen stood and walked toward him. "You must help me save my people from themselves." Patrick did not understand what the Queen meant. He asked her to explain. The queen walked to a window that looked out over the Krell capital city. Towers of crystal and metal rose up into the sky. Millions of Krell people lived below, going about their lives. For 300 years, the queen said, the Krell have been perfect. Our technology is superior. Our military is strong. Our cities are beautiful. We have conquered all enemies. We have made peace with all greater powers. Everything we build lasts forever. Everything we make works the first time. That sounds good, Patrick said. It is not good, the queen said. It is death. A slow death, but death nonetheless. She turned to face him. Her purple face was serious. 300 years ago, the Krell were different. We failed sometimes. We tried new things. We made mistakes and learned from them. We created new ideas. We changed. We grew. But success made us afraid of change. We decided that perfection was safety. We stopped trying new things. We stopped failing. And when we stopped failing, we stopped growing. Patrick began to understand. Your people became stuck, he said. Yes, the queen said. We became stuck. We built more weapons, but did not change how we fought. We built more cities, but did not change how we lived. We became larger and stronger, but we did not become better. We did not become wiser. We did not become more creative. The queen walked back to her throne and sat down. When I saw you repair that armor, she said, I saw hope. I saw a way for my people to change. But change is frightening for a species that values perfection. How do I make my people want to fail? How do I make them want to try new things when trying new things might mean breaking what we have built? You do not force them, Patrick said. You show them. You show them that failure is not bad. You show them that trying new things creates new possibilities. How? The queen asked. Tell me how to do this. Patrick thought for a long moment. Then he said, start with the engineers. Engineers understand that to build something new, you must understand how things work. Engineers are willing to ask questions. If the engineers change, they will influence others. The change will spread. The queen nodded. Then that is what we will do. For the next 6 months, Patrick worked with engineers from across the Krell Empire. He brought them to the palace. He trained them in human methods. He taught them to experiment. He taught them to fail without shame. He taught them to document everything they learned. Some engineers rejected his teachings. They returned to their cities and said that this human way was foolish. But others saw the value. They saw that when they allowed failure, they could solve problems faster. They could create things they had never created before. The engineers began to change the way Krell technology was built. New weapons were developed. New tools were created. Structures became more efficient. Medical devices began to heal Krell illness that had been untreatable for centuries. Word spread. The Krell people began to see that change was not bad. Change was good. Then the queen did something unusual. She announced that she wanted to study human history. She wanted to understand how humans had survived on their world when so many terrible things happened there. Humans had been prey to large animals. Humans had fought wars with each other. Humans had faced hunger and cold and disease. Yet humans had survived and thrived. How? Patrick began teaching Krell scholars about human history. He told them about human persistence. He told them about humans who failed but tried again. He told them about great human inventions that came from trying to solve simple problems. He told them about human creativity and human courage. The Krell scholars were fascinated. They began to ask new questions. Questions that the Krell had not asked for 300 years. Questions about what was possible. Questions about what could be created. Questions about how to live better. The queen observed all of this from her throne. She saw her people beginning to change. She saw young Krell asking their teachers new questions. She saw older Krell revisiting old problems and finding new solutions. One day, she called Patrick to her again. "Something is changing in my empire," she said. "I can feel it. The Krell are becoming something new. What they will become, I do not know. But it is different from what we were. Is that bad?" Patrick asked. "No," the Queen said. "It is necessary. My people were dying, slowly. We were perfect, but we were dead. Now we are alive again. We are uncertain again. We are trying things again. We are failing again. And it is good." The Queen stood and placed a hand on Patrick's shoulder. "You came to our world as a laborer," she said. "You were supposed to help build our cities and repair our equipment. But you did something greater. You showed us that there was another way to live. You showed us that perfection was not the highest goal. Learning and growth were the highest goals." "I only repaired some armor," Patrick said. "No," the Queen said. "You repaired something much larger. You repaired the soul of an empire. You showed us that we could change, that we could fail, that we could become something better than what we were." The Queen walked to the window again. Outside, the city was changing. New buildings were being designed in ways the Krell had never tried before. New weapons were being tested. Young Krell were gathering to discuss ideas and possibilities. "What will happen now?" Patrick asked. "Now," the Queen said, "my empire will grow in ways we cannot predict. That frightens some of my people, but it excites others. We will make mistakes. We will fail, but we will also discover things we never thought possible. We will become more than we were." She turned back to Patrick. "Will you stay with us?" she asked. "Will you continue to teach my people how to think like humans? How to embrace failure as a path to success?" Patrick looked out at the Krell Empire. He thought about the colony ships. He thought about the humans who had left Earth searching for a new home. He thought about how maybe this was their purpose. Not to be workers, but to help other species learn, to help other species grow. "Yes," he said, "I will stay. I will teach. I will show your people what humans have learned over thousands of years of failure and persistence." The Queen smiled. For the first time, Patrick had seen a Krell smile. "Then let us begin," she said. "Let us show the galaxy what humans and Krell can create together." 2 years had passed since Patrick first arrived at the Krell Palace. The Empire had changed in ways both small and large. The change was not always smooth. Some Krell resisted the new way of thinking. Some wanted to return to the old ways of perfection and rigid order. But the Queen held firm. She created schools where Patrick and other human teachers taught Krell students. She opened laboratories where engineers could experiment without fear of failure. She encouraged her military leaders to think creatively and adapt their strategies. The neighboring Velrith had noticed these changes. They had tested the Krell border 3 times. Each time, the Krell responded differently. Each time, the Velrith were forced to retreat. The Krell were no longer predictable. The Velrith did not know how to fight them. Word spread through the galaxy. The Krell were changing. Other species took notice. Then one day, the Queen called Patrick to a private chamber. No guards, no advisors, just the 2 of them. "I want to show you something," the Queen said. She walked to a table and picked up an object. It was the piece of armor. The same armor that Patrick had repaired 2 years ago. "Do you remember this?" she asked. "Of course," Patrick said. The Queen turned it over slowly in her hands. "When you repaired this armor, I thought you had solved a simple problem. A damaged piece of equipment was broken. You made it work again. It seemed like a small thing." "It was a small thing," Patrick said. "No," the Queen said. It was the biggest thing that has ever happened to my empire. She placed the armor on the table between them. I realized something recently, the queen continued. The armor was not the only thing that needed repair. My empire needed repair. My people needed repair. Our way of thinking needed repair. We were not broken in the way the armor was broken. But we were stuck. We were trapped in a single way of being. We could not change. We could not grow. Patrick listened carefully. For 300 years, the queen said, we believed that perfection meant we did not need to change. We did not need to try new things. We did not need to fail. We had everything we needed. We had control. We had power. But what we lost was possibility. We lost the ability to become something different. Something better. The queen picked up the armor again. When you repaired this, she said, you did something impossible in our eyes. You took something broken and made it whole again, not by replacing it, but by understanding it. Understanding its structure. Understanding its purpose. Understanding how it could be restored using methods we had never considered. That is just repair, Patrick said. No, the queen said. That is wisdom. That is what my empire needed. Wisdom to understand that different does not mean worse. Change does not mean loss. Failure does not mean weakness. The queen sat down and motioned for Patrick to sit across from her. When I gave you the military problem, she said, I was testing you. I wanted to know if your way of thinking could solve impossible problems. But what I did not realize was that you were solving a much larger problem. You were teaching my generals that victory does not always come through strength and superior weapons. Sometimes victory comes from thinking differently, from being flexible, from accepting that there is more than one way to win. Patrick said nothing. He waited. And when I asked you to work with our engineers, the queen continued, I thought we would simply repair more broken equipment. But what actually happened was that my engineers began to think like humans. They began to ask questions. They began to experiment. They began to see that failure was not something to hide, but something to learn from. The queen stood and walked to a window. The city below was full of activity. Krell of all ages were working on new projects. Young Krell were in schools learning from human teachers. Older Krell were redesigning old structures with new ideas. My people are becoming something new, the queen said. Not better, perhaps, but different. Alive in a way we had stopped being alive. This is the true repair that you have accomplished. I only taught them to think differently, Patrick said. Exactly, the queen said. And that is everything. She turned back to face him. 2 years ago, a human man stepped forward in my throne room. No one knew his name. No one knew what he could do. But he did it anyway. He repaired something that seemed beyond repair. And in doing so, he changed the course of an entire civilization. The queen walked over to Patrick and placed her hand on his shoulder. Your species is young, she said. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your cities are small. Your power is limited. But you have something we had lost. You have the ability to adapt. You have the ability to learn. You have the ability to fail and try again. That is worth more than all the weapons and technology in the galaxy. Patrick felt something in his chest. Pride, perhaps. Or maybe just the feeling of knowing that he had made a difference. What will you do now? He asked. Now, the queen said, I will do what I have been avoiding. I will make a formal announcement to all the Krell. I will tell them that we are establishing a permanent human presence in our empire. Human teachers will train our children. Human engineers will work in our laboratories. Human soldiers will serve in our military. We will send Krell scholars to learn about human history and human culture. There are many Krell who will not like this, Patrick said. Yes, the queen said. There will be resistance. Some will say that we are becoming weak by accepting human influence. Some will say that we are abandoning our traditions. Some will say that we should return to the old ways of perfection and order. What will you tell them? Patrick asked. I will tell them the truth, the Queen said. I will tell them that the old ways made us strong, but the new ways make us alive. I will tell them that perfection is a cage, and we are finally breaking free. I will tell them that the human who repaired our armor has repaired something far more important. He has repaired our future. Patrick stood. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. Everywhere, change was happening. Not all of it was easy. Not all of it was smooth. But it was real. It was genuine. It was alive. There is one more thing, the Queen said. Patrick turned to face her. I want to send the armor, she said, to your colony ship. I want it to be kept in your most important place. Not as a monument to my empire, but as a monument to what humans can teach us. When your people look at it, I want them to know that their struggle, their willingness to adapt and try new things, their ability to fail and learn from failure is valuable. It is precious. It is the future of the galaxy. Patrick felt tears on his face. He did not try to hide them. The Queen is wise, he said. No, the Queen said. I was not wise. I was stuck like my empire was stuck. But you made me willing to see a different way. That is what humans do. That is what makes humans special. That is why the galaxy needs you. Patrick returned to the human colony ship Harmony 6 months later. With him came the repaired armor, placed carefully in the main hall for all humans to see. He carried with him records of everything. He had taught the Crow. He carried the knowledge that he had changed the future of an entire species. But most importantly, he carried the understanding that small actions can change big things. That one person, willing to try and fail, can teach an entire civilization that a different way of living is possible. The armor sat in the hall of the Harmony, a reminder that repair is possible. Change is possible. Growth is possible. And that sometimes the greatest strength is not in having the perfect weapon or the perfect technology, but in having the courage to try something new, even when you might fail. The Krell Empire continued to change. Not all at once, not without resistance, but slowly the new way of thinking spread. The Krell became less rigid. They became more creative. They became willing to fail. And in failing, they learned. And in learning, they grew. Years later, when humans and Krell worked together to face a galactic crisis, they won not because one species was stronger than the other. They won because they had learned to think together. The Krell brought discipline and power. The humans brought adaptability and creativity. Together, they were greater than they could have been apart. And it all began with a question. A simple question asked by a queen who's brave enough to let go of perfection. Who repaired this armor? She had asked. A human named Patrick had stepped forward. And in that moment, the future changed.